I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting June 1st, 2025. There is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States.
A $35,000 electric car meant to be Volvo's most affordable offering in America is now selling for over $46,000. Why? Because of one tweet and a 50% tariff threat from President Trump. At first glance, this might sound like tough trade policy. But in reality, it's American buyers, not Europe, footing the bill. Volvo was forced to abandon its China-based production for the EX30 and relocate to Belgium. But with the tariffs still looming, costs surged anyway. Trump says it's about protecting U.S. jobs. Yet most Volvos sold in America are already built in Europe, not China. Tonight, we expose how a Made in America slogan turned into a European price hike for U.S. families.
There is no tariff because what they'll do is they'll send their companies into the U.S. and build their plant. If they build their plant here, then they have no tariff at all.
President Trump claims this tariff isn't punishment, it's motivation. He believes if European automakers want access to American consumers, they should pack up their factories and build right here in the U.S. But here's the reality: Volvo was already importing most of its U.S. inventory from Europe, not China. In fact, 16% of its global sales come from the U.S. market, and those cars, including the EX30, were set to be shipped from Belgium. So why the price surge? Because Volvo initially built the EX30 in China to lower costs. The 50% tariff threat made that strategy impossible. Production had to shift to Belgium, raising the car's U.S. sticker price from $35,000 to $46,195. That's an $11,000 jump, and guess who's paying for it? Not China. Not Europe. American drivers. Volvo CEO Håkan Samuelsson didn't mince words. He said outright, customers will have to pay a large part of the tariff-related cost increases. And even more starkly, if the 50% tariff goes through, it would be almost impossible to sell the EX30 here. To avoid collapsing U.S. sales, Volvo is rushing to ramp up its only American factory in Charleston, South Carolina, to produce a new model. But it won't be ready in time to offset the damage to its EV lineup. Meanwhile, Volvo's stock fell 5% in a single day. A tariff aimed at reshoring manufacturing may have just priced one of the most affordable EVs out of the American market. And the chaos didn't stop at Volvo.
President Trump just threatened to hit the European Union with a 50% tariff on all imported goods. See stock futures turning sharply lower, really the minute he made that threat.
The world didn't wait until June 1st to react, the markets panicked immediately. Before any tariff was actually signed, European indexes plunged. France's CAC dropped 1.66%, Germany's DAX tumbled 1.19%, and Italy's MIB nosedived nearly 1.71% in a matter of hours. The damage was global, but it was especially severe for companies that had quietly been preparing for this storm. Behind the scenes, Volvo's leadership had already started moving pieces. Sources say the company fast-tracked the opening of its Belgium-based EX30 production line in April, weeks before the tariff was even confirmed. Why the rush? Because this wasn't a surprise. Tariff talks had stalled months ago. Executives feared Trump was serious. So Volvo rerouted its EV production out of China, a country Trump had already targeted, and into Europe. But that wasn't a clean solution. Once the EU became the new target, even Belgian-made vehicles were exposed. The company found itself trapped. Volvo CEO Samuelsson made it clear, this wasn't sustainable. It could become impossible to import one of our most affordable cars to the United States, he said. Even more telling was what wasn't said publicly. Internal forecasts leaked to trade analysts show Volvo expected up to a 35% sales decline in the US if the EX30 couldn't remain competitively priced. This isn't just about one car. The EX30 was supposed to be Volvo's breakthrough model in America, the kind of EV middle-class drivers could afford. It was their shot at competing with Tesla. Now, that strategy is unraveling. And they're not the only ones on edge. Because what Trump did to Volvo might just be the start. What happened to Volvo was just the first tremor. The real quake is what's coming for the entire auto industry. Ford, GM, and Toyota all rely heavily on international supply chains. Many of their low-cost vehicles are imported into the US from Mexico, South Korea, or Japan, countries now nervously watching how fast this tariff war is escalating. At first glance, these brands seemed insulated. They weren't building in Europe, so why panic? Because the logic of Trump's tariff doesn't stop at the EU. It's a warning shot. A precedent. If a 50% tariff can be slapped on Europe overnight, who's to say Japan or Mexico won't be next? Ford is already reconsidering its long-term import plans. GM has reportedly paused discussions about expanding its compact EV imports. And Toyota, which depends heavily on international production, quietly issued a memo to US dealers, warning of potential price disruptions in Q3 and Q4. Even if these companies aren't hit today, they're pricing in the risk. And that's enough to send shockwaves. Consumers may not see it yet, but executives do. New model releases are being postponed. Investment in US EV infrastructure is being re-evaluated. Internally, some automakers are even considering reducing inventory shipped to American lots in fear of overnight cost spikes. Meanwhile, back in Europe, executives are calling this the most unpredictable US trade policy environment they've ever faced. Volvo's decision to shift production to Belgium was supposed to dodge China-related tariffs. Instead, it landed them right in the crosshairs of an even bigger trade war. And it all hinges on one man's tweet, backed not by legislation, but by the threat of executive action. If that's the new normal, then no trade deal is ever truly safe. And no company is ever fully prepared. Because the fallout doesn't just hit corporations, it hits workers next. While Trump frames the 50% tariff as a move to bring jobs home, the reality on the ground feels much colder, especially for the American workers already inside the system. Take Volvo's Charleston, South Carolina plant. It's the company's only US factory, and in theory, it should benefit from Trump's policy. No tariff if built in America, right? But it's not that simple. The EX30, the car that just jumped from $35,000 to $46,000, isn't built there. And according to Volvo's roadmap, the Charleston plant won't be retooled for EX30 production anytime soon. Instead, it's preparing to produce a mid-sized hybrid, a completely different segment. That means the model being punished by tariffs isn't creating American jobs at all. It's just becoming unaffordable for American buyers. So what does that leave for Charleston's workforce? A shaky promise of future expansion someday. In the meantime, the plant's long-term stability is uncertain. If US sales dip and model demand changes, so does the factory's production forecast. Workers can't bank on slogans. Volvo says they hope to grow domestic production. But hope isn't a contract. And hope doesn't pay the mortgage. Instead of certainty, US workers are now trapped in the middle, caught between a global pricing war and a political strategy that changes with every post. And while Volvo scrambles to recover, other companies are watching, quietly planning their next move. For all the talk about bringing jobs back, what we're seeing instead is a quiet shift, one where companies don't fight tariffs, they just go around them. Volvo's move from China to Belgium wasn't an act of patriotism or job creation. It was a survival tactic. And when that pivot failed too, the company didn't announce plans to expand in South Carolina, it raised prices and passed the burden to the buyer. That's not reshoring. That's repositioning. And they're not alone. According to recent filings, multiple European automakers are now exploring Mexico as a production hub for EV components headed to the US. Why? Because Mexico's trade relationship with America, under current rules, avoids the EU classification, for now. It's a colder move, one that avoids both China and the EU, but leaves American workers out of the loop entirely. Meanwhile, German and Swedish suppliers who were gearing up for US expansion are pausing projects, fearing more policy volatility. One parts manufacturer even told Reuters that they've shifted focus to Asian markets where there's more predictability. Volvo's CEO may be hopeful about a future deal, but the industry's behavior tells a different story. No one's betting on stability. They're betting on escape routes. And in that calculation, it's not the White House or Brussels that loses first. It's the American worker, priced out, laid off, or simply left behind. Trump says it's simple: build in America, avoid the tariff. But for Volvo, and countless others, it's anything but simple. They moved production, raised prices, and still ended up in the line of fire. Now, American buyers are paying more, and American workers are still waiting for jobs that may never arrive. This wasn't a win for U.S. industry. It was a warning. In today's global economy, aggressive policy without precision doesn't bring factories home, it pushes them somewhere else. So here's the question. If even Europe gets priced out of America, who's really being protected? And who's next? Leave your thoughts below. Is Trump's trade war protecting your wallet, or putting it at risk? And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns on the policies shaping your paycheck.